Neha, thank you so much for being with us here today. This is our third session of Tamara Perspectives, and our session today is entitled The $1 Trillion Gap Strategies for Gender Parity. This title refers to the 2018 McKinsey Global Institute report, which states that advancing gender equality could add $12 trillion to the global economy by 2025. Consequently, these advancements would add $4.5 trillion to Asia Pacific's collective GDP and $770 billion to India's GDP. The World Economic Forum's 2024 report on the gender gap cites McKinsey's research, further noting that closing gender gaps in the private sector benefits over 850,000 women. I'm eager to seek your insights on this because you have been working to alleviate gender disparities in India for nearly a decade now. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey and how the development of HerKey came about and, how it's been going for the last 9 years?
Sure. Thank you, Shruti. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Lovely to see, a company like Tamara looking at creating these kind of different perspectives for your audience, and, happy to talk a little bit about the social impact that is required to be done in India from a women's perspective. So I'm the founder and CEO of HerKey, formerly jobsforher. It's a 9-year-old company now, and I started this based on my own personal experience, which was that after graduating in finance, working in education, and then pharmaceuticals, I became a full-time mom for 3.5 years. And when I decided to get back to work, I realized what a positive experience it was to restart your career, and at the same time so challenging. And that's when I realized that, this would be a colossal loss of talent to our economy, to our country, and to the women themselves if we don't figure out a way for getting women back to work. And that was really the genesis with which I founded then jobsforher 9 years ago. Today, we are India's largest women's career community. We have 4.5 million women on the platform, 15,000 plus companies, and 2,000 plus experts who just want to be there to motivate, guide, and inspire women. Also, as we have expanded over these years, we've also figured out a way to not just get women to restart their careers, but also for those who want to get a fresh start or a late start. And most importantly, how do we get women to rise in their careers? So we work a lot with companies across the bandwidth of recruiting, retaining, and advancing women in the workplace.
That's amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about what you see as the most common challenges? I think we talk about this, right? I think there is a lot of information out there about the challenges that women face in, like you said, entering the industry or re-entering the industry. But from your perspective, what have you seen as some of the most common reasons why women are finding this challenging?
Oh, so many. But okay, So first and foremost, the reasons why women take a break in their careers are usually the 4 M's. That's what we like to call it. The 4 M's, yes. So first and foremost, there's marriage. Yeah. And usually like, a girl graduates from college and boom, she's married immediately. Many times, the reason why fathers are educating their daughters is to find a good husband and not a good job. And once you found that good husband, then why do you need to work? Yeah. For the ones who do want to continue working, though, marriage sometimes create a mobility problem because in India, about 70% of women migrate to another city after they get married, And when they move to another city, there's a lot of, when it comes to relocation, settling in, etc., where they think that, okay, fine, maybe I'll take a pause in my career for now. Or many of those women move to Tier 2, Tier 3 India, where there aren't that many job opportunities currently. The third biggest reason why women stop working is motherhood. That's usually, in many cases, a dead end to their careers. In fact, if you ask a woman how long her break is and then you ask her how old her child is, it's usually the same. And the fourth reason then also becomes medical care to the elderly. Yeah, because, these are women who are very senior in their professions, but then, there's an elderly parent or an in-law who needs that kind of medical help, and it's usually the woman of the family who raises her hand and says, I'll be there to take care of this. Now, when these women want to get back to work, the biggest challenge that they face is a loss of confidence. And I went through this myself, and of course, the longer the career break, the deeper that loss of confidence, because, you feel that the world has moved on and you can't catch up. So you feel this deficit when it comes to skills, especially with technology having impacted every field so much. You feel like, you're completely outdated, or you feel that you're not going to be able to manage both work and family. Am I going to become this fear of becoming a bad mother or a bad daughter or a bad daughter-in-law? And then there are all these biases that you have to deal with, right? At work, everybody's like, do you really care about your career considering you stopped working because of family? And at home, your family is always questioning that, why do you need to work? Isn't your husband earning enough? And all of this leads to a really big loss of confidence when that woman wants to get back to work.
And why do you feel that, in the sense, of course, there's so many reasons why women would be wanting to get back to work, right? There could be economic reasons, there could be time, my children are a little bit older now, I have more time, I want to utilize my skills. What do you feel has been the motivation in a sense, right? What is it that helps these women really get over those challenges in regards to confidence that brings them back?
So frankly, wherever there's an economic reason, in those cases, the woman might not even take a break at all. Yeah? In fact, the women who've taken a break in their careers, it means they could afford to take that break. Okay, and that is what makes it even tougher to bring them back. Okay, because economics is a fantastic driver.
Right.
Yeah, if you need to work, you need to work. You figure it out. You put your child in daycare. You prioritize, manage, you survive. Exactly. Yeah. And the family rallies around you also. Everybody, helps you because they need that money. It's when you don't need that money is when it becomes really challenging. Okay. And that time there are so many other more important motivations that come to play, right? For example, motherhood is extremely physically and emotionally satisfying and challenging. It's not intellectually challenging at all. Yeah. So one is when these women who've tasted that blood of working, okay, they want to feel that kind of intellectual challenges again, right? And so that brings them back. The third thing is, and this is the most important thing, is the societal values that we inculcate, So far, when I started jobsforher, most of the time it was this whole thing that, it was a matter of pride and a badge of honor that families would say that, the daughter-in-law of our house doesn't need to work. Yeah. Now you see that big shift happening, and I would love to think that we have helped in kind of changing the perception of women working in India. Now it's almost become like she doesn't work. Okay. That expectation from society, that expectation from families, then that becomes the expectation of yourself, where you feel that, of course, I should work. I'm qualified, I'm educated, I can contribute, okay, and so I should. The other thing is the power of financial decision making. Yeah. So, sure, you might not need to work because you need to pay the bills, but till you don't work and earn your own money, you don't have that control over financial decision making in your house. Yeah. And for women to get that power, they need to be equal breadwinners at home as well.
Mm. And the value which is placed on it as well, right? The independence, the fact that you have a skill, which is not necessarily replaceable. I also think it's an amazing thing to be role modeling for your children, right? Especially, either way, if you have boys or if you have girls. I think that when your mother works, there is this sense of, the next generation is going to be different now, right? Because the advancement, the ambition, the drive for those children will be so different. And I think I do see that a lot of women are also wanting to be that role model for their kids.
Yeah, and that's changing too. Earlier the mom guilt was a lot because, so if your children's friends' moms, nobody's working and you're the only one who's not showing up for school pickups, yeah, and all the other mommies are there, the kind of mom guilt that you go through, and I went through it myself, is a lot, right? But versus if all the other moms are working too, all the children are used to it, right? And the children are also now proud of saying, this is what my mom does, So again, it's that entire ecosystem change that is required in India, because in India, India has one of the lowest female labor force participation rates in the world. Okay, it's shocking. I mean, America is at 55%, China is at 60%, India was at 20% when I started. Yeah, today, by the way, we're at 37%. Yeah, which is a great jump. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Male participation rates in India are 80%. Now, just in that, you can see what kind of gap exists in India and what kind of promise there is for change.
No, and it's amazing to see that society is changing, because I don't think societies have ever changed at any sort of rapid rate, right? So in your career of 9 years of doing this, the fact that you have seen that change happening is actually quite remarkable. And it's
the thing that keeps us going, Shruti.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that that's just hugely motivating. And like you said, there's still so much space to grow.
Yep.
Very nice to hear that.
And actually, one of the biggest catalysts for this rapid change was the pandemic.
Really?
I mean, things literally changed overnight during the pandemic. Stuff that we have been, till the pandemic, we felt such strong headwinds. And after the pandemic, it's only been tailwinds. And what changed was that during the pandemic, lots of people lost their jobs, right? So the economics of families changed. Wherever there was a sole breadwinner and that breadwinner had lost his job, suddenly there was this need for that woman sitting at home who had the qualifications and the skills to say that, okay, maybe I should also get back to work, and for families to think that, we need to support that woman too, as much as we support the man's career. Yeah. Secondly, from a company point of view, things changed hugely, right? Till then, we used to talk about how asking for flexibility is the F word in interviews. Okay. And we used to literally tell women, please don't knock on the door asking for flexibility. Okay. Right. First, sell your capabilities, make them want you, then let them know what you need, right? But suddenly with the pandemic, all companies realize that, hey, flexibility is not so bad. It is possible to have people who, want to work remotely all the time, want to work remotely some of the time, want to work remotely just when the child is sick. Yeah. And if by providing that flexibility, if we can get access to this incredible pool of talent and reduce our cost of hiring through that way, then wow, let's do it. So the kind of demand that we saw for women talent, it's increased so exponentially that it changed the whole ecosystem. Yeah. So suddenly there became so many more women's career champions, and that is what was missing so far.
That's amazing. So on that note, what more do you think that industry can do to reduce the gap, the gender gap? And then also, specifically, if you could talk a little bit to our industry, which is hospitality, do you see any trends or any sort of movement, any even possibly, hopes that you have for the industry which would allow us to bridge our gap? Because our gap is fairly significant in hospitality. And, it goes back to the 4 M's that you were talking about. Those are specifically the milestones that we see as well, where we see that dip happening.
Okay, so first and foremost, I think it's important for companies to realize that this is not a social need. Yeah, this is a business imperative. Because, your talent in companies is everything, right? And if you are not going to have access to 50% of the talent pool, you're never going to win the war for talent. Okay. Also, we need to realize that, look, if our consumer base is going to be diverse, our employee base also needs to be diverse, right? And especially in hospitality, where you're serving both men and women, and frankly, more women as purchase decision makers. Okay. You need to have women in hospitality who will be able to make sure that we are marketing correctly, selling correctly, and also, of course, handling the operations correctly. Yeah. So I think it's important to first understand why we are doing it from a company point of view. The companies that I'm seeing putting in a lot of money where their mouth is because they realize that this is going to impact the bottom lines. Yeah. Now, but what can be done, right? And frankly, in our 9-year journey, our biggest partners in crime have been our corporates. Okay. Everything that we have learned ourselves and everything that we have been able to provide for women has been on the back of these companies. Okay. Because at the end of the day, finally, that's where, women are going to be able to join and flourish in their careers. So when it comes to companies, we've seen the companies that are doing a great job. And for example, Accenture was one of the first companies on our platform they're getting close to a 50-50 diversity goal now. Yeah, and that's so encouraging to see in a large-scale company like that. Now, when you look at the entire pipeline, start off from recruitment, right? At the recruitment level itself, there are so many barriers to entry right now for women, and a lot of that stems from biases that we as individuals hold, and as recruiters as well as hiring managers. So over there, again, at HerKey, the quota for women is something that we would never, ever advocate. But how do you fix the input metrics so that you can change the output? For example, how do you make sure that enough women candidates are being considered in the interview pipeline? That are you getting enough women CVs who are shortlisted? Are you making sure that your interview panels are diverse so that there's no bias that is stemming in over there? Are you making sure that there's pay parity that is being given when it comes to the final hire? Yeah. Then when it comes to the retention piece also, yes, we know that there are certain life stages that come in the way when it comes to women's careers. Okay. If we know that, and by the way, those life stages are not going to be there in her whole career, right? Like a woman's career will be for, say, from when she's 20 to 60, 40 years. She's going to have 1-2 children. Okay. Why have we made this maternity period of her life to be the biggest impediment to her career? Instead, if we look at it from a company point of view of how do we support that woman during that stage of her life, you're going to find yourself a really loyal and committed individual at the end of that period. Yeah. So making sure that our policies are such that we not only support working mothers, but also working parents. Because finally, a child is born to two people. Yeah. And if we can get more men to be as much as equal caregivers, then we can get women to be as equal breadwinners. The third piece is making sure that we get more women at leadership levels, and that is, Shruti, I know something that even at Tamara, you are so hell-bent on doing, because that makes a huge difference. When we see companies that have more women at leadership levels, that's just a very big difference in terms of how it plays out throughout the company, right? Like their policies are different, their programs are different, their initiatives are different. They have women's restrooms. Okay. Which, can you believe that in our generation itself, women joining companies did not have access to women's restrooms, So yes, there's a lot that companies can do, are doing, but a lot more needs to be done if we really want to reach that 50-50 goal.
Yeah. I mean, so at Tamara, we do a few different things. And I think we touch upon each of the points that you just mentioned, right? So when it comes to recruitment, for instance, we try our best to bring in as many female CVs as possible into the organization. It is difficult at times because what happens is, especially in hotels, we recruit a lot from hotel management schools, for instance. And in hotel management schools, you see a fairly equal distribution of men and women. But when the applications come in, you see that first drop-off happening. Maybe because of marriage, maybe because families, were okay with them studying hotel management, but they were not necessarily okay with them working in hotels or moving to cities where the jobs are, all of that. So we see that bit of a drop-off, but we try our best to see if we can bring in as many CVs as possible and that they are judged fairly, in a sense, right, when the employment happens. The second thing is what you said about maternity, about parental flexibility. I have somebody very senior in our team. She was 2 months into her motherhood journey when she came in, and I remember, the question that I asked her, and what she responded with was regarding support. Do you have the support that you need at home to be able to do this job? I know you have the skills. I know you have the capability. Like, it's really just a matter of, is your family rallying around you to be able to, family, whomever, rallying around you to be able to support you so that you can do this job, right? And it has been a great journey with her. Similarly, we've had people who have become first-time mothers who, of course, we have, maternity as per the policy, which is 6 months today. But if they require a little bit more flexibility for the next couple of months on a case-to-case basis, we do that because we value them, right? And it's not about replacement. It's not about even finding somebody with the same skills. It's that this is a person that we know we want to stick by, and we want them to stick by us. And so if you are able to kind of take these decisions at a management level and you are imbibing that same culture into all the managers who are then empowered to make that same sort of decision, and then you're able to have a much more inclusive organization, a more empathetic organization. And then the last point, of course, is on senior leadership. For us, we believe that that really is the way to drive change, right? Through the entire system. It is a slow process, right? I think, again, we have a huge drop-off in terms of the number of CVs we get for it. But we have a program internally which is hopefully bringing women up into the organization, into these senior roles. And then what we've done is also set targets to say that when there is natural attrition in a senior role, that there will be a goal to ensure that that role is filled by a woman going forward, so that slowly the change happens. But it's this kind of combination of a natural plus a bit of a push, which is happening to ensure that it happens. Because I really do think that that is the most impactful thing that we can do, right? If we could change the way that role models look, right, in an organization, and that itself will change the inclusivity, the way that people, the entire team behaves, and it will become much more sort of welcoming to more women, more diversity of any sort, really. And that's the ultimate goal for us.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you that, look, the needle is so far right now that if we want to push it to the middle, we're going to have to push it. If we just sit back and do nothing about it, then of course it's not going to change. And we're seeing this play out time and time again at the company, right? The other thing that is very, very important is also to make sure that a lot of these intentions that are so clearly laid out at the top of the company percolates down to the bottom, and like in many cases, we'll see the leaders are all well-intentioned. They put the programs in place. And when that woman goes for that interview, she's asked, when are you going to have your next child? Yes. The kind of questions that, even your mother-in-law shouldn't be asking, but a recruiter feels comfortable to ask in India. And I think these are the nuances that are going to be extremely important for us to fix.
I also think technology has a place to play in this as well, right? I think that, like, for instance, I know that in our internal system, when we look at when somebody is coming into the organization and we're doing a comparative between them and anybody else who's there, like, it's blind, right? I could only see it at the role level, for instance, to see, is there pay parity? And over time, what we're hoping to develop is also systems to see what is the gap really, and across different types of diversity, right? Like, is there really a pay gap, and like, how is it moving? So I really do that transparency that needs to be built into the system with the prioritization from the top. I think that can really change the way that the pay parity problem can also get solved, over time. So today, you mentioned, right, India has one of the lowest participations in the world, but it's growing. So that's a really positive thing. So what is, at this point, sort of your hope for the nation in a sense, and how do you feel like we're going to get there over the next 5-10 years?
So at HerKey, we really believe in 3 pillars to be able to move this needle, right? Those 3 are opportunities, learning, and communities. So if you think about the opportunities piece of it, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we are opening up access to opportunities for women. Yeah. So, for example, there was one company that came and told me very, very proudly that, Neha, we've done this great big exercise where we have figured out exactly which jobs we can open up to women. And I looked at him and I was like, I want all your jobs. There is no job that is not a job for her. Yeah. And I think making sure that we are opening access to opportunities both for women job seekers as well as for women entrepreneurs. Figuring out a way for them to get access to funding, to capital, to be able to start businesses, grow their businesses. That's the only way that we can actually get them to also participate equally in the economy. Second piece of it is learning. Now this is something that is a pet peeve of mine, where women really don't invest in their own learning. Now again, when it comes to women on a career break, they are not earning themselves at that point. They feel very comfortable asking for money for groceries and parlors and shopping. But if it comes to asking for money for taking a digital marketing course, all sorts of red flags go up. Until you don't invest in your own learning, you're not going to be able to grow in your career. The other problem is the women who are working already working 2 shifts, right? You get done with your first shift and then you're running home for your second shift. So it's very tough to find the time to invest in learning. There too, we're seeing a lot of companies now making it mandatory to get women to take up a lot of skilling programs within the organizations. Yeah, so learning is very important. Technology is helping a lot over there. A lot of continuous learning is possible through a lot of, micro-size learning, bite-size learning, and online learning. The third piece is communities, and that is actually the most critical, and that's what we spoke about, where we need the right communities around women to push them up instead of pull them down. Yeah. So once we start changing the narrative to women, we stop either calling them Abla Nari or then goddesses and superwomen. Like if we start focusing on just the real women with their real problems and real solutions, then we can get them to really succeed. Yeah. We don't need to then empower them. We need to get women to find their own power. And yeah, we're on our way, and I'm sure if we really want to achieve, our Viksit Bharat vision, we can if we get our women to participate equally. And we get our women to participate equally in the economy, and we get our men to participate equally in our homes.
I recently heard you also speak about networking and what you thought about women as networkers. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure, of course. So many pet peeves. No, one thing that we've always seen women shy away from is this word networking. They feel that networking is a bad word somehow. And frankly, I think women are the best possible people at networking. They are in touch with their school friends and college friends and building friends and parents' friends, kids and kids' friends, parents and husbands' friends and husbands' family and this. I mean, they are constantly networking. It's just that they only do it from a personal and social point of view, and they never think about tapping into those networks from a professional point of view, or building and cultivating networks that will help them from a professional point of view. And I feel like that is one change that we are constantly driving at HerKey. We are forcing women to start networking, where the entire platform is built in such a way that we have women on one side, and then we're telling women we will connect you and make you network with employers, experts, and each other. Because the employers are the ones that will find you those opportunities. The experts are the ones that will provide you that learning. And each other, together, we can build that right community for women.
And you were also talking about sponsors versus mentorship. Yes, I thought that was really interesting as well.
No, sure. So when it comes to learning, for example, there's a lot of learning that you can get from formal learning programs and trainers and experts, but there's actually a huge amount of learning that you can get from mentors. Yeah, and that is something that is also very important to cultivate for women. And again, it's something that we shy away from because women have this stupid notion that I shouldn't ask for help. I should do everything myself. And I shouldn't take up somebody's time. Again, it's all to do with that confidence bias, right? But only if you find the right mentors will they be able to find the gaps that exist in your skills, in your capabilities, and your confidence, and push you to fill those gaps and also show you the way how. Okay. And over there, again, it's very important to find not just female mentors for women, but also male mentors. Okay. Because, and I've had both, I've had women mentoring me, men mentoring me on a diverse variety of topics. Okay. And whenever I'm at those tricky junctions of both, by the way, career stage and life stage, it's usually these mentors who will help me prod me further. But besides for mentors, what's also important to cultivate are sponsors. And the easiest way to think about it is a mentor is somebody who talks to you, a sponsor is somebody who will talk about you. Because if you want to actually open these doors to these opportunities, that sponsor will be able to do that for you. You need that person in the room with the access to that opportunity who is then pushing your name forward. Yeah. And then when that happens, of course, we need to grab that opportunity. I love that saying which says that when you're offered a seat in a rocket ship, you don't ask which one.
Yeah. So just to close this out, to round this up, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is benchmarks. I think that it's really important for us to set benchmarks for ourselves on a short-term basis, on a long-term basis, so that we're constantly driving ourselves to that next level of improvement for us. Do you use benchmarks in your organization? And are there any benchmarks that you feel like organizations such as ours possibly are setting for ourselves so that we can constantly sort of drive ourselves towards this gender parity?
Yes. No, absolutely. I think if you want to drive any change, it has to start with the right data collection and the right benchmarking. And also then the showcasing of the best practices so that others can learn from it as well, right? So especially when it comes to the corporate point of view, every year we run a very comprehensive survey with about 300 companies, and we create this comprehensive report on the best practices across diversity policies, diversity hiring, women returnee programs, women leadership programs, L&D programs, diversity programs, with where companies fall, right? Like what are they doing, what are they not doing, where do we see the gaps that still exist, and how companies can then better their programs to reach their goals. Now, for example, one of the gaps that we've consistently found over all these years has been paternity leave. Yeah, and the number of companies that offer paternity leave is still extremely small. Okay. And so you're part of the very, very small minority. And so it's also important to see where companies are when it comes to these best practices. Yeah. And so that we can push those needles. Also from our own company perspective, I mean, analytics, data reporting is everything, right? I mean, my other favorite quote is, "In God we trust, everyone else brings data to the room." But when it comes to data, it's both quantitative as well as qualitative data. So we are constantly doing a lot of surveys and checkpoints and studying our, GA in and out, Google Analytics. But we're also doing a lot of focus groups with our women. Yeah, and also figuring out from every cohort of women. Like for us, for example, our big cohorts of women are starters, restarters, and risers, to constantly understand what their evolving needs are and how as a platform we can serve them.
I think in your position, listening must be such an important part of this, right? Because you're dealing with two fairly complex stakeholders with businesses and women, and the needs can constantly change and evolve. So you as sort of, the people in the middle who are trying to bridge the gap or bring these two parties together, it must be a very interesting place to be.
Yeah, no, and it's the perfect flywheel, frankly. And our third stakeholder are experts, okay, who are also very important in this flywheel. And so that's why the more we understand women's needs, the more we can serve them better by serving the needs of our experts and employers too. And which is why HerKey has always stayed focused on women's careers, because that's our flywheel. So many people have told us that, hey, why don't, especially when we raised our first round and went to the investor community, okay, we got a lot of well-intentioned advice about how, look, the only thing that works in the women's space is lifestyle and fashion. Yes. Yeah. So, don't you think you have so many women coming to your platform? Because we have 1 million women coming on a monthly basis to our platform. Yeah. And they said, that's great. Then why don't you sell them stuff for their kids? Or, but that's not part of our flywheel. Yeah. Understanding the needs of women's careers and how we can solve them by understanding the needs of experts and employers, that works as a perfect flywheel. And I think that's very important for every business, right? If you understand what your flywheel is and then stay true to that, that's when exponential growth can happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Neha. This was such a great conversation, and it's amazing to hear the work that you're doing and the improvements that are happening. And I love that you said also that after COVID that you have these tailwinds which are pushing you forward, because I really feel like it can change so much. I think economically, societally, just for all the future generations to come, like what you guys do really matters. And I'm so glad that there are people such as yourself in the ecosystem pushing all of us, industry as well, advising us as well as to how we can do things better, and ensuring that, the women that are working with us today and tomorrow will have those opportunities. So thank you so much for this. It's been so great. We're going to take some of these benchmarks that you spoke about, catalog them. We also want to create a repository of best practices. So thank you for sharing this, and yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Shruti. This is a real pleasure, and it's fantastic to see the work that Tamara is doing in this space. So onwards and upwards.
Yeah, we still have lots to do, I think. I think there's always more room for improvement, and like I said, I mean, we're so passionate about, like, especially the leadership part. I think we're so really passionate about it. So we look forward to working with you guys as well to improve on that. So
Great, thank you.
Thanks.